Hello and welcome to In Parliament. Parliament continued its debate tackling the spending plans of the Defence, Foreign Affairs, Health, Law and Environment and Water Resources Ministries today. Announcements included an increase in the monthly allowance for all national servicemen, more affordable care for all Singaporeans and taking care of health and the environment while making legal aid more accessible for the lower income. Starting first with the Defence Ministry, Minister Ng Hen outlined the security challenges faced by Singapore. He said Singapore's circumstances force the country to leverage on technology and innovation to overcome its limitations, even as he reiterated the need and importance for national service. Dr. Ng said the Republic's forces have to know more, see first and respond sharply and decisively to disable and destroy would-be aggressors, and added that in this area it has made considerable progress over the years and is now acknowledged to have a highly capable and professional military force able to execute missions across a variety of security challenges.
Nothing will change the fact that we are a small island of just over 700 square kilometers. We are also one of the most densely populated countries in the world with no strategic depth. What does that mean? It means that we lack any hinterland to buffer our people and infrastructure against attacks. The sea is at our backs. With an economy that is highly dependent on global trade to survive, we need to ensure the continuity of our lines of communications and trade through air, sea and land.
In view of Singapore's vulnerabilities, Dr. Ng said it was necessary for the military to maintain its edge by investing considerable resources over a prolonged period. The government's approach to defence spending, he added, is to maintain a stable budget that grows gradually in absolute terms and manage that prudently. Over the last 5 years, defence expenditure has grown steadily by about 4% yearly on average, from $10.7 billion in 2008 to $12.3 billion this year.
In view of our aging population and additional pressure to spend on social security in the years to come, there's a growing perception that the defence budget would require some moderation in future. The security architecture in the region, in particular ASEAN, and the relationship between militaries in the region gives reason to be relatively positive about the low probability of outright military conflict breaking out in the region.
We are acutely aware that we are the major share of our government budget. We buy only what we need, scrutinize available options for the most cost-effective solution. Our first instinct is to upgrade existing platforms to extend their lifespan, instead of purchasing new ones. So, for example, the Navy's corvettes, some of you may have served on it, are 21 years old. But instead of being replaced immediately, will be upgraded to add many more years of operations. Our 2 Archer-class submarines were bought second-hand and upgraded to be stealthier, with longer endurance and extended reach. Our Leopard tanks were also bought second-hand and upgraded to meet our operational needs. We only acquire new platforms when the capabilities they provide are considered critical.
From talking about the hardware, the Defence Minister next addressed the software behind the military, its people. Dr. Ng said that ultimately it is people that form the fighting force. He addressed the perception that Singaporeans seem to have to contribute more through national service or NS, and others just reap the benefits. Dr. Ng said the government has to show its people that NS contributions are valued.
I hope the Singaporeans recognize that all that we are doing to build this Singapore up, the various systems, the social support, is for Singaporeans. And we'll have to do more, recognizing the NS contributions to show that citizens count for more and that foreigners complement and help us build this place. I'm not sure there's enough, but I think we also have to bear in mind that Singaporeans, on the other hand, have also received from others. We have many Singaporeans who go overseas, to UK, to Canada, to Australia, to US. And when I was serving in the US, not serving in the army, sorry, studying in the US, I was doing my fellowship in cancer surgery at MD Anderson. It was first Iraqi war. And there were lectures scheduled, surgeries that I could attend, and I was there on a government scholarship. And top surgeons from this top cancer center were called up, volunteers. So a top thoracic surgeon suddenly was called up. Lectures were cancelled because he went to serve. I was there. He's protecting his interests. I'm continuing to study, or he is giving up opportunity costs. So the shoe can be on the other foot. And we have to explain to Singaporeans, in the longer term, this is for our country and for your children.
For a start, the rank allowance for servicemen will be increased across all ranks by $60 per month from April this year. This is for all servicemen in the Singapore Armed Forces, Singapore Police Force and Singapore Civil Defence Force. The allowance was last reviewed in 2009 when it was increased by $20. In Parliament, MP Ong Teng Koon had called on the Ministry of Defence to better recognise the contributions of NS men.
The SAF owes much of its success to the conscript of young men from the age of 18 and regular reservist call-ups throughout their adult lives. However, our modern lifestyle has necessitated that the need for our servicemen to sacrifice a meaningful part of their early adulthood, often finding themselves 2 years late to the party when they compete in universities on a job market globally.
This latest allowance review goes one step further in signalling our acknowledgement of our servicemen's commitment and service as we mark 45 years of NS. Going forward, MINDEF will continue to look at ways in which we can better recognise our contributions of our NS men.
Besides recognising the contributions of the NS men, the Singapore Armed Forces is also leveraging on technology to make sure the men are able to focus on their training and operational duties. Minister of State for Defence and Education Lawrence Wong said this will minimise standing around time. Mr. Wong also said the SAF is employing more modern learning tools such as videos and interactive apps to enhance collaborative learning.
We are adopting a more learner-centric pedagogy to create a training experience that is consistent with the learning habits and expectations of our soldiers. For example, our trainers today employ more coaching and facilitation methodologies. Our trainees have more team-based active learning with time allocated for them to consolidate and share their knowledge.
As for Singapore's relations with other countries, Foreign Minister K. Shanmugam updated the House on the country's relations with its neighbours. He said Singapore is enjoying a period of optimism and growth in bilateral ties with Malaysia and Indonesia. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono will meet next Tuesday for a leaders' retreat. The retreat will review progress on bilateral relations, including economic and counter-terrorism cooperation. As part of efforts to strengthen links with Indonesian provinces, a consulate will be set up in Medan this year. As for Malaysia, Singapore will embark on further cooperation in various sectors like tourism, education, immigration and the environment.
What is the status of our relationship with Malaysia, given positive developments that have seemed to characterize the relationship over the past year? Have we reached a new stage in building this relationship?
Prime Minister Lee and Prime Minister Najib Razak had a very good leaders' retreat on the 5th of January 2012 in Putrajaya. Both sides agreed to explore several new mutually beneficial initiatives to advance economic cooperation, enhance connectivity, and deepen people-to-people ties. This year, the newly established high-level work group on industrial cooperation will consider ways of promoting the twinning of manufacturing activities between Singapore and Iskandar, Malaysia.
And as Singaporeans travel more, especially to more far-flung places, one of the ministry's key challenges is providing round-the-clock consular assistance to them. Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs Sam Tan encouraged Singaporeans who travel overseas to e-register with the ministry and added it has looked to social media to provide timely information on consular matters. The ministry is also planning to launch its own smartphone application in the next few months.
While we have and we will continue to do all we can to assist Singaporeans in distress, there are also clear limits to what we can do. So we receive many requests for assistance, and not every request can be fulfilled or is within reasons to expect MFA to deal with. The decision to travel is the responsibility of the travelers and they should do all they can to secure their personal safety.
Mr. Shanmugam spoke also on the Law Ministry, announcing that a committee has been tasked to look into developing Singapore as Asia's intellectual property hub. It will look into developing a vibrant marketplace for IP transactions and commercialization, as well as building world-class IP capabilities and infrastructure. Singapore's patent regime will also be improved to increase confidence in the quality of the country's patents. Mr. Shanmugam said local companies are expected to benefit from this, as IP has become an important part of the global economy.
The value of the intangible assets for S&P 500 companies, of which IP is a major component, is about 80%. 30 years ago, it was just 17%. And over the last decade, patent and trademark filings have increased by over 40% worldwide. Worldwide royalty and licensing revenue has more than doubled to over US $200 billion. These trends will continue. Singapore must try and ride on this trend.
The Law Ministry will also be reviewing policies to increase the pool of lawyers in Singapore to meet the needs of society. Qualifying criteria will be reviewed, and so will the current admissions policy. This includes the policy on external law degrees.
I think to relook not just at external law degrees, but also the needs of the smaller law firms, how we can get people who have the aspirations to become lawyers but who can't afford to go overseas. What can we do about all of these? And how can we do it in a rational manner so that we have lawyers who are then able to use their skills in our marketplace? I think that's important as well.
And those who cannot afford a lawyer will not be forgotten, as the ministry is working to encourage pro bono work among lawyers. These include the possibility of making pro bono work a mandatory component of legal education. The measures will also encourage existing lawyers to get involved.
We will also be expanding the Legal Aid Steering Committee, chaired by former Senior Minister of State for Law, Associate Professor Ho Ping Ki. A wider cross-section of the legal community, including the judiciary, academia and practitioners, will be involved. This will bring key stakeholders in the legal community together in the Legal Aid Steering Committee to set the strategic direction for pro bono efforts and rally the legal community to do more pro bono work. Together, we hope these initiatives will help foster a greater spirit of giving within the legal profession and improve access to justice.
The Law Ministry will also tighten the regulatory framework on money lending to protect borrowers' interests. These include strengthening the enforcement powers of the Registry of Moneylenders, safeguarding borrowers' information from loan sharks, as well as clarifying the provisions governing moneylenders' place of business. Senior Parliamentary Secretary Sim Ann says moneylenders meet the needs of people who are unable to borrow from banks. Abolishing the industry would only drive it underground, so the government prefers the approach whereby the industry is allowed to operate, but it is regulated to give protection to the borrowers. Now, the Environment and Water Resources Ministry has announced measures aimed at keeping food prices stable, particularly for hawker centres. From April, hawkers will no longer be allowed to sublet or assign their stalls to another person. Ms. Grace Fu said existing stall holders will have a 3-year grace period to adjust to these new conditions and believes this will help to stabilise rentals, reduce costs for stall holders and achieve food price stability. She also revealed in Parliament that 7 towns will soon have new hawker centres. These include Bukit Panjang, Yishun and Punggol.
In the year ahead, we will be consulting closely with members and grassroots on the new centres that will be built. Their design and development should be informed by the views of the people they will serve, as hawker centres are more than just places for affordable food. They are also important common spaces that cultivate the sense of community upon which environmental stewardship depends. Like schools, parks, playgrounds and community centres, they are places where Singaporeans from different walks of life encounter one another, share the same space and experience things together.
Moving on to the challenges of keeping the environment clean and livable, Ms. Fu says a new Department of Public Cleanliness, or DPC, will be set up within the National Environment Agency. The DPC integrates the cleaning functions of public areas under one roof. The aim is to better manage cleaning contracts, improve service standards and responsiveness to public feedback.
The DPC will ensure public areas are well cleaned and progressively integrate existing contracts to achieve higher operational efficiencies. It will also improve on supervision of contractors' performance by, for example, using web-based remote camera systems to monitor litter-prone places.
Littering and smoking are two areas the ministry will target. It will install surveillance cameras in areas with a persistent high-rise littering problem. Ms. Fu also said more effort should be made to develop stronger community ownership for a clean environment.
Sir, it is said that there are Singaporeans who are still not taking ownership of the clean and green environment that we have worked very long to achieve. In fact, people have forgotten about doing what is right, only about not getting caught.
Stepping up enforcement for littering does not completely address the deeper challenge of nurturing the right values. We must build greater individual ownership and community action if we are to raise the standard of cleanliness in all our public spaces. We need to cultivate these attitudes and values from a young age. And we are working with MOE to integrate environmental responsibility into MOE's values-driven school curriculum.
And the smoking ban will soon be extended to more public areas. These include common corridors, void decks and staircases within residential buildings, sheltered walkways and overhead bridges and outdoor hospital compounds. Smoking will also be prohibited within a 5-meter radius around bus shelters. Ms. Fu said the long-term goal is to prohibit smoking in all public places except designated smoking areas. And moving on to the issue of flooding, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says there is a comprehensive plan to strengthen Singapore's flood resilience, and this includes improving the drainage system and the accuracy of flood risk assessments. For example, high-resolution digital elevation maps for the Marina catchment area are being developed to produce more accurate flood risk mapping for the area. The ministry will also invest in at least 20 new drainage infrastructural projects over the next 5 years.
Another key element of this strategy is transparency. We will make all the data from all our sensors available in real time so that the public can be kept fully informed of the situation in real time and can take the necessary precautions. It will also be an avenue for more stakeholders to generate innovative solutions. That's why you may have noticed that whenever there's a heavy storm, there's literally a flood of SMS alerts, a flood of tweets from drain sensors, updates to social media platforms, and eventually we'll put all the real-time closed-circuit television images available on websites and for the public to access.
There will be no change to water charges this year. Minister Vivian Balakrishnan said whatever is collected in revenue through the various water charges, however, does not fully cover the total system costs of Singapore's water supply. Revenue collected in the last financial year is estimated at $1 billion compared to the $1.3 billion of PUB's capital and operating expenses. Dr. Balakrishnan said each year the government has to provide a grant to PUB to support its capital investments. He added that any lowering of water tariffs will require his ministry to request for more in tax revenue from the government.
Perhaps I think he should let us know what is the cost per cubic meter of water PUB produce, and what is the effective tariff that PUB charges Singaporean or the household users.
It's important to go back to the overall system because we need to ensure that Singapore will have a secure, reliable supply of water, even when contracts expire, even when we face droughts, and even if there are any accidents or other disasters in parts of our island. That should immediately tell you it's not a simple matter of how much does it cost to buy water from Malaysia, or to even get water from a desalination plant. You have to pay for the cost of an entire system. And I said, look, this is all very transparent and it's laid before Parliament.
Now, for the Health Ministry, Mr. Gan Kim Yong first outlined the challenges facing Singapore's healthcare system. The first was how a growing and aging population would impact the country's capacity needs. By 2030, he said, 1 in 5 Singaporeans will be aged 65 and above. Second, the aging population will change how healthcare is delivered to the people. Mr. Gan said increasing life expectancy and more sedentary lifestyles have led to a growing burden of chronic diseases. And finally, Singapore needs to actively manage the rise in healthcare costs.
Around the world, many governments are struggling to contain rising costs, and Singapore too is not spared from the effects of global healthcare inflation. We thus need to constantly innovate to stay cost-effective in how we deliver care, to ensure that healthcare remains affordable for everyone.
To that end, Mr. Gan says his ministry has put together a Healthcare 2020 master plan which encompasses a set of strategies to guide them in building an inclusive healthcare system for the future. Starting with the issue of infrastructure, Mr. Gan announced that by 2020, 3,700 more hospital beds will be added. And with more hospital beds, the government will increase manpower capacity. By 2020, the Health Ministry plans to grow the healthcare professional workforce by 50% or about 20,000 more. And to attract overseas-trained Singaporeans, the pre-employment grant will be extended to local students studying dentistry overseas.
Ms. Wong Shi Min is one such recipient of the pre-employment grant. Currently studying in the University of Glasgow, Shi Min grew up aspiring to be a doctor because of her mother's experience as a nurse and ex-paramedic. PEG will give her an opportunity to return and work in a public hospital and be closer to her parents. Shi Min's aspiration is to be an A&E specialist so that she can be at the front line of saving lives. Shi Min will return later this year to start her housemanship. I'm heartened that Shi Min and others like her have decided to return and contribute to public healthcare.
The salaries of healthcare professionals will also be increased. The new pay framework is to be rolled out in phases over the next 2 years. We'll see doctors on average getting increases in total compensation of around 20%. From April 2012, doctors will receive increases depending on job levels. Dentists' pay will be similarly adjusted.
We must also recognize the important contributions of our public sector nurses, pharmacists, and allied health professionals who form the core of our healthcare workforce. They will also see a one-time base pay increase of between 4% to 17% from April 2012. In particular, senior nurses, pharmacists, and AHPs, allied health professionals, will be recognized for their experience, leadership, and as well as their role in training the next generation. As an example, a nurse manager will expect to receive between 8% and 13% of increase in base pay.
While the government invests in infrastructure and manpower to build up capacity, it will also tap on private sector resources to supplement public sector resources. Health Minister Gan Kim Yong said there is an opportunity to tap on existing spare capacity in private hospitals, where the occupancy rate currently averages around 55%.
Tapping on private sector capacity is not entirely new to us. For example, NUH has been renting 30 beds at West Point Hospital since 2009. We have since reached an in-principle agreement with Parkway to lease some of their beds at Parkway East Hospital, which will ease the load at Changi General Hospital. We will continue to explore ways to tap on private sector capacity.
Parliament has been adjourned till tomorrow. Good night.